If you're looking for a good slice of life anime to watch, then you've come to the right place, because today I'm going to be doing a review of Hyouka, and to be honest, I enjoyed it quite a lot. So here is my review. I hope you enjoy. So what is this anime all about? Like I said at the beginning, it's a slice of life anime, and it's about this high school kid called Oroki. He is a kind of a grumpy teenager. In fact, he's incredibly lazy. So lazy that he will go to enormous lengths to try and do as little as possible. His motto is, if it doesn't have to be done, don't do it. If it does have to be done, then make it quick. Now, despite being a sort of lazy teenager type, Oroki does have one particular talent which sort of shines above all others, and he's something that he's very, very good at, and that is sort of detective work, problem solving, solving mysteries, that kind of thing. And that is a very prevalent and important part of his character. Now, unfortunately for Oroki, he can't live his energy conservationist life for too long, because when he joins high school, his older sister, who has previously been at the high school quite a few years ago, basically demands that he joins the classic literature club, because without Oroki's help, the club is going to disband because there's not going to be enough members. And the sort of premise of the series is that the 4 members, 2 boys and 2 girls, solve a series of mysteries in and around the school in a sort of relaxed slice of life context. So what I will say to start is, well, first of all, this series won't appeal to everyone. I'm going to be straight out there and say that, because you know, this is a real slice of life anime, which means it's very relaxed. There's not a huge amount of like complex plot or, you know, fast-paced action or anything like that. It's a sort of more laid-back, sort of chilled thing, but it actually doesn't necessarily mean that there's no depth to it. In fact, there's a surprising amount of depth to it, but it's a more sort of character-driven kind of thing. What I will say is, if you do like mysteries, that will probably help, because mysteries are a huge part of this series. The majority of episodes, in fact, pretty much all of them, is, you know, based around Oroki and his friends solving mysteries, and there's not a huge amount of deviation from that. And let's talk about the mysteries very quickly, because you know what, I thought, well, there's only so much you can do with a series of mysteries around the school. It's not, you know, about solving murders or anything like that. It's fairly, I suppose, on the surface, you know, kind of petty stuff. The girl Chitanda is basically curious about everything, anything and everything, and if you don't know the Japanese for I'm curious, then trust me, you will by the end of this series, because Chitanda says, "Watashi wa kiri narimasu." I'm pretty sure I said that right. She says, "Watashi wa kiri narimasu" so many times. She is really curious about everything, and what it means is that poor Oroki, who is an energy conservationist, as he calls himself, has to go around solving these stupid mysteries. But actually, the mysteries are surprisingly quite clever. Now, they're presented in a sort of laid-back, relaxed way, slice of life way, but actually, it's the kind of thing that's quite clever in the sense that if you want to actually sit down and try and work out the mysteries as Oroki goes, then there's actually quite a lot of complexity to some of them. Some of them are more simple, but actually others have a fair amount of depth to them, and they kind of range from who stole a piece of chocolate, and then there's my favourite mystery personally, which is one where Oroki manages to solve a crime just from a little bit of information that he hears on a school channel. He doesn't even get out of his chair, he doesn't speak to anyone other than Chitanda, but he manages to solve this quite complex crime. So actually some quite clever stuff. You can kind of sit back and watch Oroki do his thing, and the way that he solves the mysteries are really quite clever, but actually also, if you really sort of think about them more, you think, damn, these are actually surprisingly quite clever. So really did actually enjoy the mysteries. What I will say though, pertaining to the mysteries, is that I don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the first half of the series, but definitely the sort of turning point where I really started to enjoy the series was around the point of the high school culture festival, because I felt like the beginning half of the series was, a lot of it was just about introducing the characters and, oh, by the way, there's a lot of mysteries. In the second half, there was an equal amount of mysteries, but it felt like the mysteries were sort of driving forward the characters and the sort of development and the relationships of the characters that little bit more. So, and I thought they were more interesting as well, actually. So, particularly around the high school culture festival, you get to see the characters outside of the context of just doing problem solving, and you get to see a sort of deeper side to them, and I enjoyed it more because you know, what I like about Slice of Life is really delving into the characters and their, you know, relationships and all that kind of thing. So that I thought was much improved in the second half. As you get to know the characters, they become more and more likable. And that's, I suppose, my next point really, is the characters are very, very likeable. And this is important for Slice of Life because, first of all, there are only really 4 core characters in the series, so you're going to be around them a lot. And that's the whole nature of Slice of Life. You are essentially peering into another person's life, a group of people's lives, and you're just sort of hanging out with them for the day. That's what it kind of feels like. And that means the characters must kind of be likeable, otherwise, you know, it will get boring or not very interesting very quickly. As I said at the beginning, Orochi, he's quite a relatable character, particularly if you're slightly on the lazy side or the demotivated side. He's just a great character. He's quite funny. His sort of deadpan deliveries with his humour and all that certainly is good. And then Chitanda, well, I think she's a bit of a fan favourite. Really, really sweet character. Very, very likeable character, Chitanda is. So, yeah, I think the characters are really cool to hang out with them. Fukube and Mayako were pretty cool as well. So, I did like them a lot. Another thing I liked, by the way, this was one particular scene. I'm sure this has got to be some sort of reference to Death Note, because it just can't not be. As I said at the beginning, Orochi, this teenager who's very, very good at detective work, has sort of long, dark, out of control hair. That might already be reminding you of someone. Then I saw this clip and I was like, that definitely is a reference. Have a look at this.
アレクス神社でマヤカさんが巫女のアルバイトをするんだそうです。
似合わんだろうな。
ひどいですよ、オレキさん。福部さんも行くそうですので、オレキさんもいかがかと思いまして。
If that is not an intentional reference to L in Death Note, then I'm very, very disappointed, because I saw that scene and I thought, I've seen that somewhere. So I did like the little nod to L there, because he's one of my favourite anime characters of all time. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got to say about Hyouka. There's not a huge amount to say because, look, it's not a hugely plot-driven anime. I can't criticise the plot or anything like that. It is what it is. It's a series of mysteries, hanging out with these high school kids who are very, very likeable and quite funny as well. What I will say is, if you hate mysteries and that kind of thing, probably the series isn't for you, because that is what it's about. Very much so. It's kind of got a theme of, Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie and that kind of thing sort of behind it all. I did at times start to wonder if it was going to get a little bit repetitive, because the sort of formula for each episode is they're hanging around, something mysterious happens, Chitanda says, "Watashi wa kininarimasu," and then her eyes light up and Orochi goes, "Oh no, here we go again," and they solve a mystery. But you know what? I actually didn't mind that, because the mysteries were quite varied. The ways that Orochi solved the mysteries were quite varied and interesting, and to be honest, it's not a hugely plot-driven thing, but if you do have a tendency to get bored by maybe series that follow a sort of similar construct or structure to them, then maybe this isn't for you. But I didn't have a problem with it personally, and as I said, in the second half I think the mysteries become more varied and it becomes more about driving the characters forward rather than the actual result of the mystery itself. So like I said, the second half of the series I think was even better, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was just a very sweet, smart slice of life anime. Now I am going to talk about the end of Hyouka. If I have any sort of reservations or disappointments, it does pertain to the last episode, but I'm not going to talk about it here. I'm actually going to talk about that in a separate episode, because I feel like it sort of deserves its own sort of analysis in itself. It's a very interesting ending. I won't spoil it because there's no point, but yeah, the ending is quite interesting, and I'm still sort of thinking about it, whether I like it or not. I'm not sure, but I'll make a separate video on that, and also talking about whether there'll be more of Hyouka, a separate series in the future. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. It's probably a shorter one, but there was sort of less to talk about. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you around.